this week we have an article from Federal News Network. Again, government's top of mind for us. We've got some fun things in the works. And this article says there are three trends driving adoption of data analytics to strengthen federal HR. This is published January 28th. So, Summer, go ahead and talk about some of the themes that you saw in this and make it practical for the small business listener.
Absolutely. I think that sometimes when we come across news like this and we see that it's the Federal News Network or, trends in federal HR, sometimes it's easy to just scroll past it because it's like, well, that doesn't apply to me. And, whatever they're doing isn't really that important. And I actually have to disagree. I think that we really need to be paying attention to what's happening in the federal space because, if the government's doing it and they are, typically the last to adopt or slower to adopt things that are, kind of on the cutting edge or, driving things forward, like kind of leading the trends. If they're doing it, I think we definitely need to be paying attention. And in this article, kind of the key takeaway for me was that one, the adoption of data and just analytics in the HR space being a priority was like, ding, ding, ding. Okay, everybody, if you aren't currently collecting data and using it as part of your HR strategy, if you haven't started, now's the time. But where the government is really doing some wonderful things is that they've actually mandated that the chief data officers and the chief evaluation officers at every single agency implement what they're calling a data-driven approach to DEIA. And to me, that is really, really a wonderful position for the government to be taking. And I think this should absolutely have the eyes of everybody to look at their organization, their strategy, and ask, what do we need to do to take a similar approach? Because that's how we're going to help drive some of the change.
Yeah. Government. I have a love and tension relationship with government because it's it reaches into everything that we do, which is not a bad thing at all. But I have stories of going into state agencies and seeing processes happening that I'm like, we stopped doing this, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. I'll never forget when I went to register my company in Maryland and someone was working on microfilm. And I was like,
Oh boy.
I've never seen that in person before. But to your point, Summer, about like if government's paying attention to it, it's a big deal. I really do believe that we are in the age of a great awakening for government at the federal and state level of topics that are important to the everyday worker, topics that are important to the workforce in general, and really it's starting to modernize and turn the corner of not just being known as like the bureaucratic place where it takes forever to get things done, but understanding that individuals work for organizations, they work for companies, they work for government agencies, and they all want the same things. A great place to work, great place to grow, a great place that they can feel proud of the technology and the processes. And so it is great that this is happening. And it is great that there's such a data-driven charge around DEIA. And what that means, for the small business owner is like, if government can do it, so can you. And it actually makes it easier. It's easier for you because the scale is smaller. But you can set data-driven goal metrics around our candidates. How many of them were diverse? Of our hires, how many of them were diverse? Of our retention, what does our retention look like for our diverse team members? And it allows you to think strategically around how you're meeting the mark or not. And it's something we can help you with, but not to plug right away. But that's what stood out to me is if government is leading the way, in DEIA from a data perspective, I think it's important for us to figure that out too.
Mm-hmm. I agree, and I'm really excited that this is in the news. I hope that we see more of it, and we start to see more companies find ways to adopt these strategies. And I think sometimes when we think about we think about data and analytics. We think, gosh, we have to be experts in everything right away in order for it to work. And the reality is that you can actually start small and scale, and that's what most companies do. And that working with us to get these programs going is a wonderful first start. But also, as companies grow, there are a whole host um, of software and other companies that can layer in and help support so that it's not such a heavy lift, and that it can be scalable and sustained through companies year over year.